Hi, Gift Mitch here again. I want to go over a few more things on the Kennedy assassination. There's always a few things that occur to me. I'm going to have to try to be quick in this 10-minute thing to get it all in. What we're looking at here again are the bitmaps, and I also have the JPEGs where we can compare. We'll look at here is the difference, and you'll notice it in different versions of the Zapruder film, where here we have numbers 2 frames missing, 157 where there's a cut. We have the blue image here on the top, as opposed to our JPEG version, where they've got this real gnarly regenerated version from a different frame that they've used to put in there. Right? Okay, so when you're watching some of the different versions of the Zapruder film, some of them you'll notice that when the car emerges out from behind the sign, there's a big jump. And like in this one in the bitmap version, where the car that comes out has the blue tint here, and there's a big jump there, and we have our trees over here that have been, they can't line up. So you'll notice that in a couple of versions of the Zapruder film, as opposed to our JPEG version that comes down. And what they've done again is they've used some other frames from previous here, and then they'll start to block off these sprocket holes right here to make it look all kind of casual, and they fill those in so you don't see the jump quite as bad, but you'll notice it in the different versions that you look at. What looks like what happened is the first shot happened back here somewhere, and they moved the car forward and created this sign. I don't believe that sign was there. You can look in all the different versions of the film. It's what they did was they used the same frame over and over again. Sometimes they shift the car, changed the contrast, made it out of focus, whatever, and they used the same frame over and over again. You'll notice the flags won't move as much on certain frames. It's like they just repeat using them, whatever. And you'll notice this, and the way you can tell is look at any of the videos. I don't care what they are, the Nix, the Muchmore, the Tina Towner, or the Zapruder, and put it in your media player, hit play, and then pause it, and then use the space bar to restart it, and then pause it again, and use your keys and go forward a frame at a time. Hit the N key and go 1 frame at a time, and you'll click 5, 6, 7 times sometime without even moving. And then as you move forward in these frames, especially in the Towner film, you're going to be blown away at the stuff you see in there, I guarantee it. Discovery or whatnot. And then compare it with a regular video that works good, preferably like a news clip or something where the anchorman's speaking, and go forward a frame at a time where you can actually see his mouth move with each frame, and you'll notice that each time you hit that N key you'll move forward a frame, and in these films there's a whole bunch of gaps, and it will become obvious to you where those cuts are. Now this probably happened back here somewhere, and I theorize, they call up the Secret Service, so the thing probably came from the trunk, because the Oswald theory really doesn't hold water, because if you research this stuff or you remember, it was all over the news. Walter Cronkite reported they found a Russian-made rifle. It was a 7.62 caliber or millimeter, and they found 3 spent rounds, and then the rounds turned out to be .650. They measured .650 instead of .762. So it blew that whole story apart when that happened. That's when we started hearing the grassy knoll things start coming into the picture. Plus Oswald, he was never arrested for the Kennedy assassination anyway. He was arrested for that police officer being shot, and then they were going to maybe move him into the Kennedy thing, but by that time he had already got killed by Ruby, because him and Ruby were actually worked together, I believe. So anyway, the reason why, that's why these people over here on the lawn are looking in the opposite direction, because the car should be back further in the motorcade. They had to get it up here behind the sign to hide whatever happened here. Now, that first shot is an important thing to consider, because everybody sits there and focuses on the second shot, but so where did that first shot come from? I mean, the car was way back here. If you think it came from the grassy knoll, that would be quite a shot, and then a significant amount of time went by before the second shot, and to theorize that this somebody with a rifle made those shots and then escaped, to me it's not plausible. Not to mention the trajectory of the second round doesn't work. The person would have to be prone position laying on the lawn out in front of Zapruder. Okay, so when you look at the map, if you look at the map of like the way Daley Plaza is mapped out, and people will say, oh, it came from the front, and to me that's not a good enough answer to just simply say, oh, it came from the front. Well, if it came from the front, it came from where? The front, in the middle of the street, right through the windshield? It had to have come from the right. So it had to have come from this area here, which is right where Zapruder was standing, and you know, we have this parking lot here, and the trees, the brush wasn't, you know, that dense or anything. We had people standing on the steps, so it doesn't seem likely that somebody could have escaped. Not to mention the trajectory just doesn't seem right. Jackie would have been literally covered with blood if the shot came from this area or whatnot. So I don't think that's what happened. Here's some pictures of the skull here of John F. Kennedy, which here's the eye sockets right here in the nasal cavity. You can see the whole part of his skull here is blown off. That's the doctor's report, you know, just pretty much confirming the same thing. This here is the Latimer drawing from the actual X-ray of the President Kennedy's head, it says here. So, and it's very consistent with my theory and philosophy about it, or about where the entrance wound would have happened. I think that it was probably a little bit lower, but you could see if the shot came from the front or any of these other things, it would have been high on the grassy knoll, and the trajectory draws the shooter in the grassy knoll being laying down maybe below the curb line or something. So it just, that part doesn't seem to work that well for me. Zapruder here, you see where his hand is pictured when he's on the television station right after it happened, and he's got his hand exactly perfect of where this shot exited from. I mean, that is it right there. Here's another picture of the skull. This being the back of the skull, I believe, and looking at the top of his head forward. Another picture of the front here. Now the other thing